Trevor Booth stole $206 million from a Las Vegas casino in 2019. Then he did something the FBI says shouldn't be possible in the modern age. He disappeared completely. No arrests. No sightings. No digital footprint. No mistakes. At 3:12 a.m. on July 19th, surveillance cameras captured him pushing a janitor's cart through the Meridian Grand Casino's loading dock. Security badge visible. Face calm. Nothing suspicious. Just a night guard finishing his shift, except beneath the cleaning supplies sat enough cash to fill 38 reinforced cases. 6 hours later, the vault was empty and Trevor Booth was a ghost. The FBI has reviewed every frame of footage. They've coordinated with international agencies across 4 continents. They've kept Operation Phantom Guard active for 6 years with a $2 million reward. And here's what haunts them most. Trevor wasn't special. He wasn't brilliant. He was forgettable, so average that investigators struggle to describe him without checking their notes. That's not an accident. That was the plan. Because somewhere right now, Trevor Booth is living a normal life. And the person next to him, at the grocery store, the gas station, the airport, has no idea they're standing next to one of the FBI's most wanted. The question isn't just how he did it. It's what he knows about staying invisible that law enforcement is still trying to understand. Trevor Booth wasn't supposed to matter. 34 years old. Former Marine. Graveyard shift security guard at the Meridian Grand Casino in Las Vegas. The kind of guy supervisors praised for punctuality and attention to detail, but couldn't describe if you asked them an hour later. Brown hair. Average height. Quiet. Reliable. Forgettable. And that's exactly what made him dangerous. Trevor came from Pensacola, Florida, where his childhood was defined by chaos he couldn't control. His father's gambling addiction had destroyed their family, drained bank accounts, lost the house, shattered his mother's trust until she finally left. Trevor watched it all happen from the sidelines, helpless and angry. Then came his own messy divorce in his late 20s, which left him drowning in debt he couldn't escape. He joined the Marines hoping structure would save him. It didn't. It just taught him discipline. When he moved to Nevada 3 years before the heist, Trevor wasn't looking for a fresh start. He was looking for a solution. And he found it in the one place nobody would suspect, inside the system itself. The Meridian Grand Casino wasn't just any gambling establishment. It sat just off the Las Vegas Strip, a glittering palace of gold-trimmed decor and exclusive VIP suites that attracted high rollers from across the globe. Millions of dollars moved through its cages daily. But what really set the Meridian apart was its vault, a fortress protected by biometric scanners, rotating access codes, and physical keys held only by senior management. Security experts called it impenetrable. The casino marketed it as the safest cash reserve in Nevada. Trevor called it a challenge. What nobody knew was that Trevor Booth had a gift. Not the kind you celebrate, the kind that isolates you. He possessed an almost photographic memory for systems and patterns. Watch a guard enter a 12-digit code once, and Trevor could replicate it weeks later without hesitation. He noticed when surveillance cameras had blind spots. He tracked shift rotations down to the second. He understood when protocol fatigue made people sloppy, when exhaustion made them careless, when trust made them vulnerable. But more than anything, Trevor understood something fundamental about security that most people miss. It's designed to stop outsiders. The person already inside? The one wearing the uniform, carrying the badge, nodding politely as they pass through checkpoints? That person is invisible. Trevor's path to the Meridian wasn't random. After leaving the military, he drifted through security jobs across the Southeast, each one a classroom. In Jacksonville, he worked for an armored car company and learned cash transport protocols. In Atlanta, he took a job at a mid-tier casino and studied cage operations, watching how money moved from the floor to the vault and back. In Miami, he befriended a retired bank security consultant who, over late-night conversations, explained the subtle vulnerabilities in even the most sophisticated systems. Every job was deliberate. Every conversation calculated. Every observation stored away for future use. By the time Trevor applied to the Meridian Grand, he'd already spent 6 months studying the casino from the outside. He knew which contractor installed their security systems. He knew the vault manufacturer. He knew the cash transport schedule. And he knew that on the third Friday of every month, the casino processed its highest volume reserves in preparation for major poker tournament weekends. Trevor wasn't born a criminal. He was born into circumstances that taught him survival meant invisibility. And over years of quiet observation, he turned that lesson into a weapon. The most dangerous person in any system isn't the outsider trying to break in. It's the insider you've already let through the door. The one you trust because they've given you no reason not to. The one who shows up on time, follows the rules, and never draws attention. The one you'd never suspect until it's too late. If you're the kind of person who thinks you could spot someone like Trevor, prove it. Drop a comment below. Tell me what red flags you'd look for. But if you stay silent, maybe you're exactly the type of person he counted on. Hit that like button if this is already making you uncomfortable, because we're just getting started. Most criminals fail because they're in a hurry. They see an opportunity, act on emotion, and hope luck carries them through. They make mistakes, leave fingerprints, forget details, panic when things go wrong. Trevor Booth wasn't most criminals. While others scrambled for quick cash, Trevor was playing chess. And he was thinking 20 moves ahead. His preparation didn't start in Las Vegas. It started years earlier, across the Southeast, in jobs that seemed random but were anything but. 2016. Jacksonville, Florida. Trevor took a position with an armored car transport company. On the surface, it looked like just another security gig. Decent pay, straightforward work. But Trevor wasn't there for the paycheck. He was there to learn how cash moved under maximum security. He studied the routes, the timing, the blind spots in GPS tracking. He memorized the protocols guards followed when loading and unloading high-value shipments. He watched how complacency crept in after the 100th uneventful run, how routines made people predictable. 6 months later, he quit and moved to Atlanta. 2017. Atlanta, Georgia. This time, Trevor worked security at a mid-sized casino. Not the flashy kind on the Vegas Strip, the regional kind where security was tight but not paranoid. Here, he studied cage operations. He watched how dealers transferred chips to cash, how supervisors counted reserves at shift changes, how money flowed from the gaming floor to the vault and back out again. He learned the language of casino security, the codes, the hand signals, the unspoken hierarchies. More importantly, he learned how trust worked in these environments. Guards who showed up on time, kept their heads down, and never caused problems? They became part of the furniture. Invisible. By 2018, Trevor was in Miami. And this was where the pieces started coming together. He took a job at a corporate security firm, but his real education came outside of work. Trevor befriended a man named Carl, a retired bank security consultant in his 60s who'd spent decades designing and installing vault systems. They met at a bar near Trevor's apartment, struck up a conversation about military service, and over the next 8 months, became something resembling friends. Except Trevor didn't do friendship. He did information extraction. Carl loved talking shop. After a few beers, he'd explain the vulnerabilities in high-security vaults, the ways manufacturers tried to patch weaknesses, the backup systems designed to prevent lockouts during power failures. He'd sketch diagrams on napkins, laughing about how even the most sophisticated systems had Achilles' heels if you knew where to look. Trevor listened, absorbed, asked just enough questions to keep Carl talking without raising suspicion. By the time Trevor left Miami, he had technical manuals, system specs, and a 45-second window of vulnerability burned into his memory. Late 2018. Trevor moved to Nevada. But he didn't apply to the Meridian Grand right away. That would have been sloppy. Instead, he spent 6 months watching the casino from the outside. He studied employee schedules, delivery patterns, shift rotations. He identified which security contractor they used, the same one Carl had worked with for years. He learned the vault manufacturer. He mapped out the cash transport schedule and noticed the pattern. Every third Friday, reserves spiked for major poker tournament weekends. Only then did Trevor apply. And when he did, he was the perfect candidate. Clean background. Military experience. glowing references from previous employers who remembered him as reliable and unremarkable. He got the job. But Trevor's planning didn't stop there. While working at the Meridian, he did something most people would consider insane. 2 years before the heist, he purchased a remote section of desert land through a shell company. No buildings. No utilities. Just empty Nevada wilderness an hour outside Las Vegas. He paid cash in small increments to avoid raising red flags. Then, over months, he buried a shipping container on that land and filled it with supplies, water, non-perishable food, forged identification documents, a second vehicle with switched plates. He was building his disappearance before he'd even committed the crime. Meanwhile, at the Meridian, Trevor played the long game. He worked graveyard shifts without complaint. Never called in sick. Never drew attention. And after 14 months of flawless service, he was promoted to senior guard status, a role that came with one critical perk: vault access during emergencies. It wasn't luck. It was strategy. While most criminals act on impulse, Trevor played chess. Every job he'd worked, every friendship he'd cultivated, every decision he'd made for years, it all led to one moment. And when that moment came, Trevor wouldn't be improvising. He'd be executing a plan he'd perfected in his mind 1,000 times. Patience isn't passive. It's strategic. And in Trevor's hands, it became a weapon sharper than any gun, any explosive, any brute force approach. Because while the world expects criminals to be reckless and impulsive, Trevor understood something deeper. The most dangerous predator is the one you never see coming. 2016, 2017, 2018, Trevor was building his escape before he even committed the crime. And by July 2019, every piece was in place. Still watching but not subscribed? Trevor studied people like you. Silent, passive, distracted. He counted on viewers who consume but never engage, who watch but never act. Are you sure you're not the kind of person he'd exploit again? Hit that subscribe button and prove you're paying attention. Because what comes next is where patience turns into execution. July 19, 2019. 11 p.m. Trevor Booth clocked in for his shift at the Meridian Grand Casino, just like he had for the past 14 months. Same routine. Same badge scan. Same polite nod to the supervisor at the security desk. Nothing about this night looked different to anyone watching. But Trevor knew better. The casino was in chaos. Earlier that evening, the main air conditioning system had malfunctioned, turning the gaming floor into a sauna. Guests were irritable. Staff were on edge. Management scrambled to coordinate emergency repairs while keeping high rollers from walking out. To make matters worse, 2 security team members had called in sick, leaving the night shift dangerously thin. Coverage gaps stretched longer. Patrol rotations slowed. Supervisors focused on damage control instead of protocol. It was the kind of night where everyone's attention was somewhere else. For Trevor, it was perfect. 14 months. That's how long he'd worked at the Meridian without a single incident, complaint, or reason for anyone to question him. He showed up early, followed procedures, kept his head down. By now, supervisors didn't even glance at him during shift changes. He was just part of the background, as routine as the surveillance cameras mounted on the walls. That invisibility was about to pay off. The Meridian's vault wasn't just secure, it was a masterpiece of modern engineering. 3 layers of authentication stood between the outside world and $206 million in cash. First, a biometric palm scanner that verified authorized personnel through vein pattern recognition. Second, a 12-digit rotating access code that changed every 72 hours and was known only to senior management and a handful of senior guards. Third, a physical key mechanism controlled by the head of security, designed to prevent any single person from accessing the vault alone. On paper, it was impenetrable. In practice, it had a flaw. Trevor had discovered it months earlier, thanks to the technical manuals he'd obtained through Carl back in Miami. The vault's internal backup system, designed to prevent lockouts during power failures, created a 45-second window during the authentication process. In that brief gap, if you knew the exact electronic sequence, you could override the physical key requirement. It required precision timing, the right equipment, and intimate knowledge of the system's architecture. Trevor had all 3. 2:47 a.m. He made his move during the longest gap in guard patrols, right between surveillance camera rotation cycles, exactly when cage supervisors were conducting their shift change count on the gaming floor. He approached the vault access corridor, calm and unhurried, carrying a custom-fabricated RFID device no bigger than a credit card, hidden in his boot for the past 6 hours, and a miniature electronic tool designed to loop camera feeds for 90 seconds. He activated the loop. The cameras wouldn't show what happened next. Trevor placed his palm on the biometric scanner. It accepted his print immediately. He'd been granted vault access 6 months earlier as part of his senior guard promotion. Another piece of the long game falling into place. Next, the 12-digit code. He'd memorized it 2 weeks ago by watching the head of security's fingers during a routine access check. Muscle memory made it easy. Trevor entered the sequence without hesitation. Now came the critical moment. The 45-second window. Trevor deployed his electronic override device on the physical key mechanism, running the sequence Carl had unknowingly taught him years ago. The system hesitated, just for a heartbeat, then accepted the override. The vault door released with a soft pneumatic hiss. Inside, stacked on steel shelves and locked in reinforced cases, sat approximately $206 million in cash. Tournament reserves. Weekly profits. High roller deposits. Enough money to change a life, or disappear forever. Trevor didn't take it all. That would have been reckless. Instead, he grabbed 38 specifically marked cases containing non-sequential large bills scheduled for Federal Reserve transfer the following Monday. Money that would be in transit limbo, making its disappearance slightly less noticeable during the initial confusion. He loaded the cases onto a janitor's cart he'd positioned earlier, covered them with cleaning supply boxes, and calmly wheeled them through service corridors toward the loading dock. Thanks to the air conditioning repairs, construction crews were moving equipment in and out all night. One more cart rolling through. Nobody looked twice. 3:12 a.m. Trevor Booth walked out of the Meridian Grand Casino with $206 million, loaded it into a rented panel van parked in the employee lot, and drove into the Nevada desert. His shift didn't officially end until 7 a.m. The theft wouldn't be discovered until the morning audit at 9:30 a.m. By then, he'd have a 6.5-hour head start. In 25 minutes, Trevor Booth went from night guard to ghost. And nobody saw it coming. Opportunity doesn't knock, it whispers. And only the prepared hear it. Trevor had spent years listening. And when chaos created the perfect opening, he didn't hesitate. He executed. Now came the hard part, vanishing completely. 3:12 a.m. Trevor Booth drove into the Nevada desert with $206 million and a 6.5-hour head start. Most people would have panicked. Rushed toward Mexico. Scrambled for the Canadian border. Made desperate, adrenaline-fueled decisions that leave trails. But Trevor wasn't most people. And he wasn't improvising. He headed northeast, away from the obvious escape routes, toward a section of barren desert land he'd purchased under a shell company 2 years earlier. No buildings. No neighbors. Nothing for miles except sand, rock, and silence. The kind of place where you could bury a shipping container and no one would ever know. Which is exactly what Trevor had done. Inside that container sat everything he needed: water, non-perishable food, forged identification documents, a second vehicle with switched plates, and a prepaid burner phone he'd never activated. He transferred the money, changed clothes, and within 40 minutes of arriving, Trevor Booth, former Marine, security guard, invisible man, ceased to exist. The rental van he'd used for the heist? Trevor drove it 40 miles west, into a rocky ravine near the California border, doused it in accelerant, and set it on fire. The blaze destroyed any forensic evidence: fingerprints, DNA, trace materials. By the time authorities found the wreckage days later, it was a scorched metal skeleton that told them nothing. Meanwhile, back in Henderson, Trevor's apartment sat quiet and unremarkable. Rent paid through the end of the month. No signs of hurried packing. No missing belongings. Just the life of a man who'd stepped out for a shift and never came back. His bank accounts, minimal as they were, showed no unusual activity. No large withdrawals. No transfers. No red flags. His cell phone last pinged a tower near the California border at 4:47 a.m., then went dark forever. Trevor Booth had vanished. 9:30 a.m. The morning audit at the Meridian Grand revealed the nightmare. Vault accessed. 38 cases missing. $206 million gone. Security footage showed a 90-second loop during the critical window, a digital ghost in the system. By the time management contacted authorities, Trevor had already been gone for over 6 hours. The FBI launched Operation Phantom Guard within hours. It became one of the most intensive manhunts in Nevada history. Agents fanned out across the Southwest, analyzing surveillance footage, interviewing employees, tracking financial records. They searched Trevor's apartment, interviewed former co-workers, contacted his ex-wife in Florida. They pulled border crossing records, airport manifests, hotel registrations. Nothing. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. The investigation expanded. 47 states, 16 countries, thousands of leads chased down dead ends. Interpol got involved. Financial crimes units scoured for any trace of the money entering the banking system. Informants were questioned. Conspiracy theories explored. Organized crime connections investigated. Still nothing. Special Agent Catherine Reeves led the task force. A 20-year veteran with a flawless track record, she'd never seen anything like Trevor Booth. He was a ghost who understood the system better than the people who designed it, she later admitted in an interview. We weren't chasing a criminal. We were chasing a shadow. Because Trevor hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen his identity, his past, his entire existence. Every digital footprint, every connection, every thread that tied him to the world, gone. He'd planned his disappearance as meticulously as the heist itself, and by the time authorities realized what they were dealing with, the trail had gone cold. No money surfaced in black markets. No informants came forward with tips. No sightings were ever confirmed. Trevor Booth had simply stepped off the map, and the FBI had no idea where to start looking. 6 years later, the case remains open. The reward stands at $2 million. Operation Phantom Guard technically never closed, it just went quiet. Because how do you catch someone who doesn't exist anymore? Somewhere out there, Trevor Booth might be living under a new name, in a new city, with a new life. He might be working another forgettable job, blending into another system, waiting patiently for the world to forget. Or maybe he's already touched the money and disappeared again. The truth is, nobody knows. And that's exactly how Trevor wanted it. Trevor didn't just steal money. He stole his identity, his fingerprints from the world, every trace of who he was. And in doing so, he became untouchable. Still think you're safe? Trevor made a career out of exploiting blind spots, the people who never paid attention, who assumed security meant safety, who trusted the uniform without questioning the man wearing it. If you're still watching without subscribing, maybe you're that blind spot. Maybe you're exactly the kind of person Trevor counted on. Hit that subscribe button and prove you're paying attention, because this story isn't over yet. The Meridian Grand Casino survived the heist. Barely. Insurance covered most of the $206 million loss, eventually. But money was the least of their problems. Within weeks, the story dominated national headlines. Impenetrable vault became a punchline. High rollers stopped trusting their reserves to a casino that couldn't protect its own. Competitors whispered doubts. Investors grew nervous. Revenue dropped sharply in the months following the theft. The damage wasn't just financial, it was existential. The Meridian had built its reputation on security, exclusivity, and trust. Trevor Booth shattered all three in 25 minutes. The security company that designed the vault system faced a storm of lawsuits. Negligence, breach of contract, failure to disclose vulnerabilities. Legal battles dragged on for years, costing millions in settlements and destroying partnerships with other casinos across the country. The company's CEO resigned under pressure. Their stock price collapsed. Some contracts were terminated overnight, all because one man understood their system better than they did. Meanwhile, the FBI continued its investigation. 6 years later, in 2025, Operation Phantom Guard remains technically active. Agents still follow leads when they surface, rare as they are. The case file sits in a federal database, flagged for any financial anomalies, border crossings, or identity matches that might connect to Trevor Booth. But the truth? Most investigators have moved on. The trail went cold years ago. Still, theories persist. Is Trevor dead? Did he miscalculate and collapse somewhere in the desert, leaving $206 million buried and forgotten? Some investigators believe it's possible that the perfect escape ended in an unmarked grave and the money will never be recovered. Others think he's living underground. New identity, new city, new life. Maybe he's in South America. Maybe Southeast Asia. Maybe he never left the United States and is hiding in plain sight, working another low-profile job, waiting decades before touching a single dollar. Or maybe, just maybe, he's already accessed the money in ways authorities will never detect. Small amounts. Untraceable transactions. Patience stretched across years until suspicion fades completely. Nobody knows. And that uncertainty haunts everyone involved. Special Agent Catherine Reeves retired in 2023, but she keeps a photo of Trevor Booth on her desk at home. Not out of admiration, out of frustration. He was smarter than all of us, she admitted in a 2024 interview. And the worst part? He's still out there, and we have absolutely no idea where. The perfect crime isn't about getting away with it once. It's about getting away with it forever. Trevor Booth didn't just rob a casino. He walked away from his entire life and disappeared into a world that no longer remembers his name. And unless he makes a mistake, unless someone talks, unless luck finally runs out, he'll stay gone. This isn't just about Trevor. It's about how systems collapse when people don't pay attention, don't ask questions, don't see the warning signs until it's too late. Someone at that casino should have noticed. Someone should have flagged the quiet guard who studied too much, asked too many questions, stayed too invisible. But nobody did. Don't be that person. Hit subscribe so you never stay blind when it matters most, because the next Trevor Booth could be watching you right now. So what does Trevor Booth teach us? Not that crime pays, though in his case, it seemingly did. Not that the system is broken, though his story exposes cracks we'd rather not acknowledge. What Trevor teaches us is far more unsettling, that the most dangerous person in any system is the one you've already trusted. The one who shows up early, follows the rules, and never draws attention. The one who becomes invisible not through stealth, but through reliability. Trevor wasn't born evil. He wasn't a sociopath with a violent past or a career criminal escalating toward bigger scores. He was a man shaped by circumstances, debt, divorce, a father's addiction, who learned that survival required patience and strategy. He watched systems fail people his entire life, so he studied those systems until he understood them better than the people running them. And then he exploited that knowledge. The lesson isn't just about Trevor. It's about us. About the blind spots we create when we confuse routine with security. About how easily we overlook the quiet ones, the guards, the janitors, the employees we pass in hallways without a second glance. We assume that because someone has been there for months or years without incident, they're trustworthy. We mistake invisibility for innocence. Trevor understood that. He weaponized it. In business, in security, in life, the insider threat is real. Not because insiders are inherently bad, but because they have access, knowledge, and time. They know where the cameras point and where they don't. They know when protocols get ignored. They know who's paying attention and who's just going through the motions. And the truly dangerous ones? They're patient enough to wait years for the perfect moment. Trevor Booth didn't rob the Meridian Grand on impulse. He spent years preparing, studying, observing, building relationships that would give him the information he needed. He purchased desert land 2 years before the heist. He cultivated trust for 14 months before making his move. While others acted on emotion, Trevor played chess. That's what makes this story so chilling. It wasn't about luck. It wasn't about violence. It was about discipline. About understanding human nature and exploiting the gaps between what we think is secure and what actually is. Somewhere out there, Trevor Booth might be living a quiet, unremarkable life under a new name. working another forgettable job, blending into another system, waiting patiently, maybe forever, before touching the money he stole. Or maybe he's already spent it in ways we'll never trace. Or maybe he's planning something else entirely. We'll never know. And that's exactly how he wants it. Because the perfect crime isn't just about stealing money. It's about stealing your identity, your past, your entire existence, and walking away so cleanly that the world forgets you were ever there. Trevor Booth proved it's possible. And that should terrify you. One man. $206 million. And no trace. Trevor Booth walked into the Meridian Grand Casino as a forgettable night guard and walked out as a ghost. He didn't need weapons. He didn't need a crew. He needed patience, discipline, and an understanding that the best way to beat a system is to become invisible within it. 6 years later, the FBI is still searching. The reward still stands. And Trevor? He could be anyone, anywhere. This case remains a haunting reminder that security isn't just about locks and cameras. It's about paying attention to the people you've already let inside. Because the next Trevor Booth won't look dangerous. He'll look reliable, forgettable, trustworthy, until he's not. Next time on True Crime Case Notes, we're covering another story where the FBI got outsmarted. Another case where the criminal understood the game better than the people chasing them. You won't want to miss it. But here's the real question. If you're still watching this and haven't subscribed, ask yourself, are you really on the right side of this story? Or are you just one more invisible enabler who lets the next Trevor walk free? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Because awareness is the first line of defense. Stay curious. Stay cautious. And remember, the most dangerous people are often the ones you never see coming.